Welcome, everyone, finally, to the 2018 Brevard County Sheriff's Office Awards Program. I'm your MC, Greg Purdon. Thank you for being patient with us. As you can see, we had some technical difficulties, but we're going to try to get through it as best we can. As you can see, this large screen TV is what we're going to be working with tonight. Just as impressive as what you have at home in your living room. But it's going to be a great ceremony. Thank you for being here tonight. We're going to open this evening with a word of prayer, followed by the presentation of colors and the singing of our national anthem by Miss Jana Ivey. Would you please stand as we welcome to the stage Dr. Larry Linkus.
Thank you and good evening. Let us pray. Our Father God, we praise you tonight. Our Lord Jesus, our Savior, our resurrected King, our faithful high priest. We thank you for this great evening of recognizing and celebrating the truly impressive actions of our agency members, volunteers, and citizens who work each and every day to make Brevard County a safe place to live and raise our families. We know, Lord, that these recipients who are being recognized for their outstanding achievements tonight represent only a small percentage of the amazing work that the members of the Brevard County Sheriff's Office collectively accomplish each year. And Lord, we thank you for those accomplishments. They're big, they're massive, and they protect our streets, our schools, our families, our homes. And we are truly, with all of our hearts, thankful. Thank you, Lord, for our sheriff, Wayne Ivey, who leads these nearly 1,500 members of the Brevard County Sheriff's Office with great vision and passion. Thank you for his heart. Thank you, Lord, for the massive leadership that you bring through him. Thank you, Lord, for his continuing efforts and his success he will bring to putting in place, Lord, what it takes to make our campuses in our county safe for our staff, our educators, for our children, our young people. Lord, we bless this evening. And while we recognize and honor men and women, we come, Lord, together as one heart to celebrate and worship you because you are a good, good Father. And we give you praise and glory. In your great name, Jesus, the Christ of God. Amen.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed ere the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the rain hearts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets regular, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave.
Thank you. Please be seated. How about a round of applause for the Honor Guard, the Pipe and Drum Corps, and Jana Ivey for that great rendition of the national anthem. It's now my pleasure to introduce your sheriff, Sheriff Wayne Ivey.
Thank you, Greg. I appreciate it. So how's everybody tonight? Come on. This is the annual award ceremony for the Brevard County Sheriff's Office. How is everybody? Much better, much better. So I know Commander Purdon touched a little bit on the difficulties we have, but I think it's important to tell you exactly what happened before we get started tonight. As everybody was outside in the reception area waiting to come in, one of our team dropped a chicken nugget, and as it was rolling away, Sergeant Jim Hammond tried to get it and knock down our flux capacitor. So it pretty much knocked us out of business. I will tell you that if you'd have been in here right before we opened the doors, you would have seen the team from the church here, the audiovisual team, jumping on and off the stage, doing everything they could to get us up and running. So before we get started tonight, please give them a round of applause because they were jumping through hoops. Thank you, gentlemen. On behalf of the nearly 1,500 members of the Brevard County Sheriff's Office, I'd like to personally thank the family members, friends, and community leaders that have taken the time to join us tonight for our annual awards ceremony. Your attendance and continued support for the outstanding men and women of our law enforcement profession is greatly appreciated by all of those who serve in this community. Now, normally when we get started, I would ask all of our VIPs to individually stand up, our elected officials and others in our audience that are here with us tonight, and we're always so blessed to have that support. But tonight, as I look across this audience, everybody here is a VIP. So instead of asking everybody to stand up, I'm going to just ask you to please give all of our elected officials and dignitaries a round of applause for being with us tonight. Now, of course, if I was going to introduce all the VIPs, I would, of course, start with my favorite mayor, Carol McCormick, who is here with us and is always so gracious in her support of us. So, Carol, thank you for being here. So tonight is our opportunity to recognize the truly impressive actions of our agency members, volunteers, and citizens who work each and every day to make Brevard County a safe place to live and raise our families. While tonight's recipients are being recognized for their outstanding achievements, they represent only a small percentage of the amazing work that the members of the Brevard County Sheriff's Office collectively accomplish each and every year. As sheriff, I get to see firsthand the incredible accomplishments that our team members achieve. But tonight, it is our privilege to share with you how each act of courage, valor, and passion made a difference in someone's life. I often tell people that I am surrounded by an amazing team who do amazing things each and every day to protect our community. And quite frankly, I'm smart enough to stay out of their way. Tonight, you will get to see the true value of that statement and why I am so proud of this agency and the men and women who make it shine. Tonight's award recipients are nothing less than our community's real-life superheroes, and I truly can't thank them enough for everything they do, and you for joining us tonight to celebrate their many achievements, demonstrations of selflessness, and acts of bravery and courage. So with that said, I'm going to turn the mic back over to Commander Greg Purdon, and I'll tell you, he's our MC for tonight. He's going to walk us through it. He's not really that good of an MC, but he was affordable. So just give him a break. He'll do fine, I'm sure. So Greg, let's make it happen, buddy.
Thank you, Sheriff. How about a round of applause for Sheriff Ivey? Now, many of you may know that the sheriff just recently started a new program, Cooking Up Justice. Anybody seen Cooking Up Justice? Yeah. No, that actually, it was a surprise to a lot of us that it came out. We didn't know it was coming out, even though it's not a surprise that the sheriff knows his way around the kitchen. Oh, come on. It was better than the flux capacitor joke.
Please laugh for Greg.
Thank you. Okay, first up tonight
That's
are all...
the difference between commander and sheriff.
You got it. You got it. First up tonight are our longevity awards, recognizing those distinguished service members of our team. Our employees are being recognized for 25 years of service.
25 years of service.
Corrections Deputy James Culver Jr. Senior Accountant Karen Dennis. Corrections Deputy Bruce Dowdy. Deputy Donald Eggert. Deputy John Ehrig. Lieutenant George Faison. Senior Human Resources Officer Ronald Faulknell. Lieutenant Michael Green. Records Technician Tamara Gross. Records Technician Margaret Hargis. Corrections Deputy Michael Hatton. Judicial Technician Barbara Hensley. Deputy John Hudgens. Lieutenant Robert Lape Jr. Agency Receptionist Christy Moore. Records Technician Jack Osborne. Agent Lee Wenner. Agent Cynthia Young. Major Tom Young.
Will those mentioned please stand? 25 years of service. Congratulations. Great job. Next, our employees will be recognized for 30 years of service, a truly remarkable milestone.
30 years of service.
Corporal Gary Anderson. Lieutenant Donald Barker. Lieutenant Ronald Barker. Purchasing Administrator Patricia Bestwick. Lieutenant John Boyd. Sergeant Jimmy Fielding Jr. Assistant to the Sheriff Bonnie Herman. Commander Darrell Hibbs. Corrections Deputy Donnelly Jenkins. Corrections Technician Diane Latham. Sergeant Robert Lowe. Reserve Sergeant Charles Nash. Commander Greg Purdon. Sergeant Alan Rainey. Judicial Technician Robin Roche. Senior Logistics Specialist Dolores Scott. Corporal Michael Van Slyke.
Will those mentioned please stand? Please stand. 30 years of service, ladies and gentlemen. Fantastic. Great job. We'll now recognize our employees with 35 years of service. What an incredible accomplishment it is.
35 years of service.
Chief Michael Lewis. Deputy James Troop.
For those of you who can actually stand up, please stand up and be recognized for 35 years of service. Where is he? That a boy, Jim Troop in the back. And last but not least, 40 years of service.
40 years of service.
Deputy David Fitch.
I don't know if Dave's here tonight, but congratulations to you, Dave, for 40 years of service. That is truly remarkable. Our next award is the Partnership Award. The Partnership Award signifies that the recipient has consistently demonstrated dedication to strengthening the relationship between the Brevard County Sheriff's Office and the community it serves through loyalty, honor, professionalism, and community involvement. At this time, we would like to recognize two special people for our Partnership Award.
Partnership Awards.
Desmond K. Blackburn, PhD, has led improvement to education and performance as Superintendent of Brevard Public Schools since July of 2015. During his tenure, BPS has worked to foster stakeholder relationships, increase instructional time, standardize discipline, expand technical and industrial education, increase school choice, and improve social and emotional support for students. The district's graduation rate is the highest among Florida's largest school districts. BPS has partnered with the BCSO to provide and improve district-wide security, a partnership that has grown increasingly important. Due to his collaborative reputation, Dr. Blackburn was recently appointed by Governor Rick Scott to serve on the newly formed Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School Public Safety Commission. He is a member of the National Chiefs for Change nonprofit organization, a group committed to policy that puts students above politics. Dr. Blackburn describes himself as a Christian, husband, father, son, brother, student, Florida Gator, and member of the Alpha Phi Alpha fraternity. Captain John W. Murray joined the Canaveral Port Authority in February of 2016. A highly respected maritime executive, Captain Murray brings a wealth of maritime experience to his role as CEO and port director for one of the world's most dynamic ports. Prior to joining CPA, Murray was president and CEO of a leading global liner shipping company. A 40-year maritime industry veteran, he has held numerous positions of responsibility, rising through the management ranks. Captain Murray is at the helm of Port Canaveral, one of Florida's fastest growing seaports, with a staff of more than 200 port employees. Through his dedication and leadership, he continues to strengthen the relationship with Brevard County Sheriff's Office, as well as the community and the port tenants they so proudly serve. Captain Murray is constantly fostering partnerships with the community, the port tenants, and the industries of cruise, space, fuel, fishing, and boating to ensure that the unique makeup of the port's existing multi-use signature is recognized.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage Dr. Desmond Blackburn, and accepting on behalf of Captain John Murray, Diane Lunsman, Senior Director of Government and Strategic Communication for the Canaveral Port Authority. We simply can't thank our BPS superintendent and our port CEO enough for their efforts and the support for our agency. Thank you both very much. Our Special Recognition Award recognizes an employee who consistently demonstrates a willingness to volunteer to serve his or her community with selfless devotion, putting others first, and has always displayed a positive attitude in the face of adversity.
Special Recognition Award.
Mary Mosman is an incredible member of the Brevard County Sheriff's Office who never misses an opportunity to give back or volunteer for anything our agency is involved in. Mary even convinces her husband to dress up as Santa every year at the Handlebars for the Holidays event, where we give away around 200 bikes to children in need. Mary also is in charge of placing American flags at the American Police Hall of Fame for Police Memorial Week to honor our fallen officers. You will never hear Mary complain about anything she is asked to do, as she always wants to go above and beyond to make sure everything is the way it needs to be. She always puts others first, as she's probably the most selfless person you'll ever meet. Anyone who knows her would describe her as the friend you are lucky to have and the person who would give you the shirt off her back.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage one of the greatest people at Sheriff's Office, Mary Mosman.
I bought her cookies.
This is how you get the Sheriff Special Recognition Award. Butterfingers.
In a gator bag.
In a gator bag.
Next, we will recognize the Lucy Ross Award. If Frank Ross has been able to get in, if you could please join the sheriff up on stage. This award was created in 2005 after the tragic loss of our friend, Sergeant Lucy Ross. One of the ways we celebrate her life is through the recognition of a special person in the sheriff's office who demonstrates the same qualities as Lucy. Qualities such as dedication to the community, the attainment of excellence in their profession, and the love of children.
The Lucy Ross Award.
Former Harlem Globetrotter Corporal Lorenzo Hutchinson uses his basketball and communication skills to mentor children of all ages and backgrounds. Through teaching basketball, Hutch has positively impacted the lives of thousands of children in his programs through the building of their self-esteem, while teaching them self-discipline, accountability, and healthy living choices. Hutch also organized Daddy Daycare, celebration of good fathers, using basketball to encourage fathers to be positive role models and active participants in their children's lives. He plays a vital role in the success of the Police Athletic League and serves as a coach for the basketball team at Astronaut High School and at the Field of Dreams Sports Complex, where he works with autistic children. Hutch serves as an example for all to emulate, proudly representing the true spirit of Sergeant Lucy Ross.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage our 2017 Lucy Ross Award recipient, Corrections Deputy Lorenzo Hutchinson.
So before you step off stage, I got a question. Can you help Dr. Blackburn learn to play basketball?
We will now recognize our Volunteer of the Year. This award is given to our civilian volunteer that has made significant contributions to the Brevard County Sheriff's Office by volunteering with the Citizen Observer Program or other volunteer initiatives with the agency. The Brevard County Sheriff's Office is proud to have well over 218 active volunteers proudly contributing their time and passion to our agency and communities.
Volunteer of the Year.
Harley Keeler has been a member of the BCSO Citizens on Patrol since 2014, currently serving as a COP coordinator for Barefoot Bay. Volunteering in excess of 1,200 hours each year for the past 3 years, he has earned the Gold Presidential Volunteer Award 3 years in a row. Keeler has brought an in-depth knowledge of law enforcement procedures to the COP program due to his previous career as a Massachusetts state trooper. Keeler coordinates with the South Precinct lieutenants on community events that need support, and he has received numerous accolades from citizens and neighbors alike who have expressed appreciation for the friendly smile visibility he brings to the neighborhoods. COP Keeler has taken it upon himself to ensure everyone feels they are part of the BCSO family.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage our 2017 Volunteer of the Year, Mr. Harley Keeler. It's now time to recognize our Citizen of the Year. This recipient is a member of the community selected for outstanding service and commitment to the citizens of Brevard County and for continued to support the members of the Brevard County Sheriff's Office. With so many wonderful citizens to support our agency, it is truly a difficult decision to pick just one.
Citizen of the Year.
Darcia Jones Francie has lived in Brevard County her entire life and was raised by parents who showed her the importance of giving back. Darcia began her life of giving when she was in her 20s, as she was recruited by the Community Foundation and has helped raise millions of dollars for countless organizations, including our very own Brevard County Public Safety Charity. A humble community servant who is not comfortable being in the spotlight, Darcia and her husband John's mission is to volunteer, raise money, and give back to a practically endless list of nonprofits throughout Brevard County. Darcia has been an incredible help for our BCSO team and those organizations that help first responders, and we can never thank Darcia enough for everything she does for our community every day.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome our 2017 Citizen of the Year, Ms. Darcia Jones Francie.
She said I'm embarrassed. You shouldn't be. You should know how much we love you and how much we appreciate all you do for this community.
We will now recognize awards of meritorious service. The Merit Bar Award signifies that the recipient has displayed unusual thoroughness, determination, and initiative in carrying out their duties. This award is for distinguished service rendered in the line of duty that is significant in nature.
Merit Bar Awards.
Corporal Jeremy Flake was monitoring Titusville Police when they dispatched an active shooter call at Parish Medical Center. Corporal Flake immediately notified his squad and upon arrival organized 2 SHIELD teams consisting of deputies and TPD to begin searching for the shooter. After arriving on the 3rd floor, it was observed that hospital security had detained a male. However, it was still unknown at that time if a second suspect was involved. Corporal Flake began assigning deputies to maintain cover on multiple stairwells, while multiple teams under his direction cleared the remaining 3rd floor rooms. Corporal Flake then directed the safe evacuation and search of persons on the 3rd floor. Deputy Nathaniel Kirk and Deputy Julianne Mangrum responded to a motel to locate a female wanted on a felony warrant. Upon arrival, the deputies knocked on the door and made contact with a male that informed them that the suspect was in the bathroom. Believing she could be causing harm to herself, Deputy Kirk forced open the bathroom door and observed the woman with a knife slicing deeply into her left wrist. While attempting to secure the subject, she swung her arm and intentionally cut Deputy Kirk with a knife. Deputy Kirk utilized his taser and the subject dropped the knife. Deputies Kirk and Mangrum were able to gain control of the subject and escorted her to receive immediate medical treatment. Deputy Michelle Sweet Caparizzo was tasked with assisting Agent Jim Landon with a federal investigation relating to child pornography, sexual enticement of a child. Deputy Caparizzo was initially tasked with monitoring and documenting jail phone calls and was able to gather substantial evidence indicating that the subject was indeed involved with sexual crimes against children. In early 2017, Deputy Caparizzo discovered a potential cooperating witness who facilitated introducing Caparizzo to the suspect in an undercover capacity. Ultimately, the investigation led to a federal prosecution of the suspect for multiple counts of sexual crimes against children, where he was sentenced to 24 years in federal prison. Deputies Dion Gerrells and John Jeffries responded to a domestic violence call. They arrived on scene, approached the residence, and observed a female through an open window. Deputy Jeffries knocked on the door several times and announced his presence. The front door opened and a small framed female was in the doorway with a large male behind her. The male then pulled her inside the residence as the door was closing. Deputies Jeffries and Gerrells reached the doorway and addressed the male and observed the female had black eyes and other marks about her face. The victim was then escorted outside for medical attention. The investigation determined the victim had been abused throughout the night by the suspect, who is charged with 18 counts, including sexual battery and attempted murder. As Deputy Jeff Cook was processing a domestic violence crime scene, he was advised the suspect was in the backyard. Deputy Cook advised this information and several other units responded to the location, to include Deputy Christopher Matthews, Deputy Joshua Hardy, and Deputy Eric Thompson. As they arrived in the backyard, they observed a dilapidated RV on fire, and they could hear the suspect yelling from within. Deputy Thompson retrieved a Halligan bar and forced the locked door open, while Deputy Cook and Deputy Matthews entered the RV and located the suspect, and the deputies dragged him to safety. In October of 2017, a former law enforcement officer and attorney was convicted of 50 counts related to capital sexual battery, lewd and lascivious molestation, and possession of child pornography. The investigation relied heavily on the BCSO's Digital Forensic Unit for extensive computer forensic analysis. The state expressed that this case would have been extremely difficult to prove absent the digital evidence, coupled with the 2-day expert testimony of Agent Francis Dufresne. The BCSO Digital Forensics Unit has become the go-to unit for all of the municipalities and our federal partners, and Agent Dufresne represents the best of what the BCSO does every day. In October of 2017, Deputy Arnold Smith was off duty when he observed a male walk up to another male and violently assault him, and then run towards a female and grab her purse, dragging her approximately 6 feet across the pavement as she held on to her property. Deputy Smith exited his vehicle and ran toward the suspect as he attempted to flee as the passenger in a vehicle. Deputy Smith identified himself and challenged him at gunpoint, directing the suspect to exit the vehicle and get on the ground. The suspect complied, and Deputy Smith held the suspect at gunpoint until backup from deputies and Tazewell police officers arrived. In October of 2017, deputies responded to an injured or ill person. Upon arrival, Corporal Zach Brown took control of the scene and rescue efforts. BCFR responded, and through everyone's participation, the victim was revived and transported. Brown then established a rapport with the resident and not only located heroin inside the house, but then coordinated the investigation to identify the suspected drug dealer, later locating the suspect who fled on foot. During the chase, Corporal Brown's pant leg tangled in a fence, causing him to fall and strike his face on a wooden post, suffering a cut by his eye as the blood was impairing the vision, but he still valiantly apprehended the suspect. In December of 2017, Deputy Kim Owen Edwards was starting her shift when she noticed 3 juveniles acting suspiciously. Deputy Edwards confronted them and noticed that one of the suspects refused to remove his hands from his pockets. She then observed a bulge in his pocket and conducted a weapons pat-down, leading to the seizure of a loaded 9mm handgun. Edwards interviewed the suspect and obtained a confession of an armed vehicle burglary. The victim was then located, who advised there was additional weapons taken from the car. The weapons were recovered and secured in a residential area, effectively ending the teen's crime spree. While first aid was being provided at an emergency call concerning an individual with multiple gunshot wounds, the deputies passed information they had received from the victim to the perimeter deputies regarding the suspect and his vehicle. Deputies Adam Weimer and Nathaniel Kirk then observed a vehicle matching that description and conducted a felony traffic stop. They quickly determined this was in fact the vehicle involved in the shooting and located a .38 caliber handgun which matched the casing recovered at the scene. Agent Ranel Barriel responded and assumed the investigation, conducting several search warrants, and obtained a statement about the shooting that determined that the victim was mistaken for a rival gang member.
With those mentioned, please stand to be recognized. Outstanding work. Fantastic. Next, we will recognize life-saving awards. Our life-saving award recognizes those employees who, under true emergency circumstances, acted to prevent the loss of life, either by exercising aid or through direct intervention.
Life-Saving Awards.
FTO Kevin Stanton and Deputy Keaton Molden responded to a report of an injured or ill person. Stanton arrived on scene first and observed a female in medical distress, not breathing and with no pulse. He began CPR as Molden entered the room and activated his AED, regaining a pulse from the victim. BCFR soon arrived, assumed critical life care, and transported the victim to a local hospital. Eventually, the female did pass away as a result of the medical event, but Stanton's and Molden's actions prolonged her life long enough to allow dear family to gather for those final moments.
We wanted to take just a pause for a moment. With us this evening, we have members of Agent Kevin Stanton's family, including his father, Jimmy, and his sister, Katie. As you know, we tragically lost Kevin in the line of duty on February 17th. And we'd like to ask the Stanton family to stand as we take a moment to recognize them and honor Kevin.
BCSO received an emergency call concerning an individual who had been shot. As the responding patrol units arrived, Deputy Lee Roth and Deputy Heather Bivens assessed and cleared the scene and began rendering first aid to the victim who had multiple gunshot wounds. While providing urgent care, they were able to obtain pertinent information about the suspect and his vehicle. The deputies' quick actions and critical aid included cutting away clothing, calming the victim, locating the wounds, and applying pressure to stop the bleeding until Brevard Fire Rescue arrived on the scene. FTO Randy Truitt and Deputy Matthew Murphy responded to a call of an injured or ill person. When they arrived on scene, an adult female was on the ground and was unresponsive. Truitt and Murphy quickly assessed the situation and deployed their AED, and then confirmed she had no pulse. Murphy applied the AED as Truitt administered CPR until BCFR arrived and took over life-saving measures. The quick response and life-saving measures administered by Truitt and Murphy directly aided in the woman's life being saved. Deputy Thomas Kelly was dispatched to a traffic crash involving a pedestrian. Upon arrival, he observed an injured male lying on the ground in front of a vehicle, bleeding profusely, with his left foot completely amputated. Kelly immediately took his trauma tourniquet and applied it to the upper left thigh to stop the loss of blood as he checked the victim for any additional wounds. Kelly then discovered that the victim had a broken arm and leg with severe cuts to his forehead. BCFR arrived on scene and took control of the life-saving efforts. The victim was life-flighted to a local hospital. The quick response of Deputy Kelly helped save the man's life. Deputy Josh Ruth responded to a reported overdose. Upon arrival, the deputy made contact with the victim who had overdosed on heroin. The victim was lying motionless on the floor, not breathing, and his face was blue. Ruth detected no pulse and immediately began performing CPR until he was relieved by Brevard County Fire Rescue. The victim was given several doses of Narcan and was later transported to Cape Canaveral Hospital. Deputy Ruth responded to the hospital where the man was now alert. His actions were credited with saving the individual's life. Deputy Ben Nemeth was on a business patrol when he noticed a fire in the wooded area north of the business. Nemeth went to investigate and discovered an intoxicated male laying on the ground in front of a tent. The male was unable to move and the fire had surrounded him. Nemeth dragged the male away from the flames to safety, where BCFR arrived on scene. The male was transported to a local hospital, treated for smoke inhalation, and was expected to make a full recovery. Upon being waved down by a frantic male motorist, Sergeant Brett Lockhart initiated a traffic stop, at which time a female passenger exited the vehicle and ran toward a ditch. The panicked driver stated she cut her wrist. Lockhart immediately gave chase while advising dispatch of a rapidly escalating situation. As the female victim was bleeding, she attempted to flee, causing Sergeant Lockhart to restrain her for her own safety. He continued to calm the victim while utilizing a towel to apply pressure to her wound. Agent Garrett DeWind and Deputy Gregory Matthews arrived on scene with a tourniquet. The three deputies applied the tourniquet, which immediately mitigated the heavy loss of blood until BCFR arrived on scene. Sergeant Christopher Ferrante and FTO Christopher Little responded to a report of a possible suicide attempt where an adult male had affixed a duct from the exhaust pipe of his truck to the interior of the truck cab. The subject had also taken sleeping pills to help facilitate his own death. Ferrante and Little quickly removed the unconscious male from the vehicle, and Little applied a sternum rub in an attempt to have the subject regain consciousness. Ferrante also facilitated the medical attention by contacting BCFR. The subject was hospitalized and ultimately survived the incident while receiving the medical assistance to address his despair. Responding to a report of a possible suicide, deputies Christina Kane and Sean Hannigan arrived on scene and located a male sitting in a chair on the rear porch of the residence, unconscious, with his face and lips looking blue. Kane began CPR and communicated with the other responding officers to bring an AED. Deputy Hannigan established an open airway while Kane set up the AED and continued chest compressions. As the deputies worked together to provide life-saving care for the victim, his condition improved and he began breathing as BCFR arrived and then took over. Deputy Ernie Plaza and Deputy Kaylee Nutting responded to a residence to perform a well-being check for an elderly male. Upon arrival, the deputies were unsuccessful in locating the victim, who had numerous medical issues. Concerned for the male's safety, Deputy Plaza was able to see inside and observe the victim lying unresponsive on the floor. Plaza forced entry so the deputies could render aid. It was later determined the victim had suffered from a major stroke. The deputies worked to calm the victim and provided measures until BCFR responded, saving the man's life. FTO Alicia Miller and Deputy Christopher Malloy responded to a suspicious incident concerning a male covered in blood attempting to flag down a motorist. Upon arrival, they located the male, who was now unconscious, lying on his stomach under some bushes and bleeding profusely from two self-inflicted deep lacerations to both wrists. Without hesitation, Miller and Malloy applied direct pressure to the victim's wounds while elevating his arms to stop the blood loss. The male then regained consciousness and became combative. The deputies were able to restrain the male until BCFR arrived and transported him to a local hospital where he required a blood transfusion due to the amount of blood loss. FTO Robert Rowell responded to a residence in reference to an unresponsive male. Upon arrival, the male was located and had no pulse, was not breathing, and was turning blue, having possibly overdosed on an unknown narcotic. Rowell entered the residence and immediately began CPR. He was then able to locate a faint pulse, at which time the victim began breathing. Cocoa Fire Rescue arrived on scene and took over medical treatment for the victim. Cocoa Fire Rescue Lieutenant Silverman commended FTO Rowell personally for saving the man's life. FTO Sean Cronin, FTO Patrick Hannigan, and Deputy Norma Castillo responded to a residence in reference to performing a well-being check on a resident who had not been seen in several days. Upon entering, they located the male lying on the floor breathing, but unresponsive. Demonstrating teamwork, Cronin, Hannigan, and Castillo immediately contacted BCFR and continually assessed his vital signs. The victim was transported to a local hospital where it was determined he had suffered from a serious and previously unknown medical condition. If not for the determination and persistence of these deputies, the victim would surely have passed away. Deputies Brent Happenstall and Herbert Smith responded to a residence relating to a possible suicide. Upon arrival, the deputies located a female locked inside a vehicle, continuously stabbing herself with a knife. Deputy Smith broke the window and entered the vehicle, as the victim was now unconscious. Happenstall and Smith then worked together to extract the critically injured victim from the vehicle, observing puncture wounds to her arms and wrists. The deputies applied pressure to the most serious injuries to slow the loss of blood until medical personnel arrived. The victim was transported to a local hospital where she made a full recovery. Sergeant James Hammond responded to a residence in reference to a report of a victim who had overdosed on an unknown substance. Upon arrival, he located the victim on the floor, unresponsive with no pulse. Hammond immediately began CPR and requested Brevard County Fire Rescue. He initiated CPR and continued until BCFR arrived and assumed medical treatment. The victim was transported to a local hospital for further treatment and made a full recovery. Without a doubt, the timely and effective life-saving efforts by Sergeant Hammond made the difference between life and death. Deputies Tyler Harrell and Brent Haptonstall responded to a residence in reference to a male who had overdosed on an unknown substance. Deputy Haptonstall made entry where he found a male unresponsive, not breathing, and blue in the face. He immediately began CPR and continued until Deputy Harrell arrived, bringing a breathing apparatus with him to assist in the life-saving efforts. The two then continued CPR until the male had a pulse. However, he still was not breathing. BCFR arrived and assumed life-saving efforts while administering medication, and the male eventually began breathing again, recovering in a local hospital. In September of 2017, Deputy Breanne Lewis responded to a residence in reference to a medical condition. The caller advised that the victim had possibly overdosed and was turning blue. Lewis entered the residence and located the victim unresponsive in a bathroom. Deputy Lewis determined the victim did not have a pulse and was not breathing. She immediately began CPR as Deputy Joel Hernandez arrived and assisted. They continued CPR until they felt a pulse and the victim began breathing. BCFR arrived on scene, assumed medical treatment, administered medication, and transported the victim to a local hospital. In September 2017, a victim was found lying on the ground, unresponsive and not breathing, at a local hotel by a citizen. Sergeant Robert Manley responded and found a citizen performing CPR on the victim. Manley checked the victim's vitals and found he had no pulse and was not breathing. Sergeant Manley then assumed CPR. After approximately 6 minutes, the victim began gasping for breath and a pulse was detected. BCFR then arrived and administered medication to the victim, who started vomiting and was then transported to a local hospital for additional medical care, where he made a full recovery. Corporal Michael Matson responded to an emergency medical condition where the victim was unresponsive and possibly deceased. Upon arrival, he found the victim lying on the floor with a pulse but not breathing. Matson immediately began to deliver rescue breaths and chest compressions until BCFR arrived to continue life-saving efforts. Due to his fast response to the scene, Corporal Matson was able to quickly assess the victim and sustain the victim's life. We would also like to commend the citizen who located the victim and performed CPR until the arrival of Corporal Matson. FTO Taylor Barrett responded to an apartment in reference to an injured or ill person. Upon arrival, Barrett discovered the victim unresponsive, not breathing, and with no pulse. He immediately began performing CPR and continued until BCFR arrived. BCFR assumed life-saving efforts and transported the victim to a local hospital where the medical staff was able to revive the victim. Unfortunately, the next day the victim succumbed to his previously unknown medical condition. Deputy Barrett had utilized his training and medical skills, prolonging the victim's life and allowing the family to gather with him as he passed. While off duty, Lieutenant Burt Gammon was traveling as a passenger when he observed what appeared to be a headlight in a swampy area. Believing that it could possibly be a passenger car that had driven off the roadway, they responded. Upon arrival, it was apparent that the vehicle had left the roadway and been involved in a rollover crash. Gammon located a 72-year-old female lying between the front seats in distress and then broke through the sunroof, identified himself, and quickly assessed the woman for injury. The woman was disoriented but without serious injury. Lieutenant Gammon assisted the woman out of the vehicle and carried her back to the roadway as emergency personnel were arriving, likely saving her life. Deputy Josh Ellison responded to a residence in reference to an unresponsive 86-year-old female with dementia. The caller advised she was in the process of taking her mother to the hospital when her mother fell and was unresponsive but still breathing. Upon arrival, Ellison checked the victim's vitals and discovered she was not breathing and had no pulse. Deputy Ellison conducted CPR until he was able to obtain a pulse. BCFR responded and the victim was transported to a local hospital where she was stabilized. Based on Deputy Ellison's life-saving aid, the 86-year-old woman was saved. Deputy Peter Chamberlain responded to a disturbance at a residence. While attempting to resolve the disturbance, he was advised by a resident that her 52-year-old son was not breathing. Deputy Chamberlain quickly entered the residence and located the victim unresponsive with no discernible pulse. He then requested BCFR and began CPR as the family became very emotional and reinitiated the disturbance. Chamberlain remained calm, utilized his training, and continued performing CPR as BCFR arrived and eventually relieved him. The victim was transported to a local hospital where he made a full recovery. In December 2017, a potential juror in the jury assembly room at the Moore Justice Center was eating when she suddenly started gasping for air while holding her hands to her throat. Deputy Steve Yermo observed the commotion and immediately stepped in and gave the woman a series of strikes between her shoulder blades in an attempt to dislodge the obstruction. When that failed, he positioned himself behind her to apply the Heimlich maneuver. On the third upward thrust, the obstruction was removed, allowing the victim to make a full recovery. FTO Patrick Hannigan responded to an injured person call where the caller advised the victim was found unresponsive and not breathing. Upon arrival, Hannigan found the victim lying on the floor with no pulse, not breathing, and with a blue face. Hannigan started CPR and maintained it until BCFR arrived. When they arrived, they relieved Hannigan and determined the victim now had a pulse and was breathing. The victim was then transported to a local hospital in stable condition. Due to Hannigan's efforts, the victim regained a pulse and began breathing on his own. BCSO Deputy Jorge Lopez and Melbourne Police Department Officer Robita were at a restaurant when Deputy Lopez observed a juvenile choking on food. Lopez identified the behavior as an obstructed airway and then rushed to the juvenile who was gasping for air and pointing at his throat. Deputy Lopez began measures to help the juvenile clear his airway by applying a series of abdominal thrusts and back blows, dislodging the obstructed food from his airway. Once the airway was cleared, the juvenile was able to breathe again and made a full recovery. The Sheriff's Office received an emergency call in reference to an injured or ill person. Upon arrival, Deputy Amanda Eichner was able to locate the victim with a frantic caller. Eichner determined the victim had no pulse and was not breathing. Without hesitation, she began CPR while calming the caller and walking her through rescue breaths. They continued this process until BCFR arrived, who then instructed the caller to move aside so they could ask her various medical questions about the victim. During this time, Deputy Eichner continued to provide CPR until BCFR took over. The victim then regained a pulse and began breathing. Deputy John Jack Hannigan responded to a call in reference to an injured or ill person at a local hotel. Upon arrival, Deputy Hannigan found the victim not breathing and unresponsive. He immediately began CPR until Brevard County Fire Rescue arrived on scene to continue the life-saving efforts. It was determined that the victim had overdosed and after being administered medication was revived and transported to the hospital. Due to his timely response to the scene, Deputy Hannigan was able to quickly assess the victim and sustain the victim's life until Brevard County Fire Rescue arrived. Deputies John Vaughan and Anthony Pena were dispatched to an injured or ill person. Upon arrival, they found the victim lying unconscious on the floor, taking sporadic shallow breaths and a fading pulse. Both deputies began CPR for approximately 10 minutes until relieved by Canaveral Fire Rescue. CCFR administered medication to the victim, who began to respond positively and began breathing normally, eventually regaining consciousness. The victim was transported to a local hospital and made a full recovery. The victim later responded to Cape Canaveral Precinct, where he met with the deputies in person to thank them. While conducting Hurricane Irma security operations, Deputy Scott Stewart and Agent Daniel Genova responded to the beach in reference to an injured or ill person call. The deputies observed the victim laying face down in the water and immediately ran to her location and pulled her from the ocean, where she was barely breathing and incoherent. With the storm affecting transport, Genova and Stewart contacted Deputy Donald Erie and placed the injured female into the back of Erie's port canine truck, along with a Canaveral Fire Rescue EMT. They then drove the female to Merritt Island, where an ambulance was waiting their arrival. Deputies Stewart, Genova, and Erie worked as a team to do what was required to save the woman's life. In November of 2017, Deputy Lauren Hannon responded to an unresponsive male on the ground. Upon arrival, she observed the victim lying on the ground, taking shallow breaths and had a faint pulse. While awaiting Cape Canaveral Volunteer Fire Rescue to respond, the victim stopped breathing and had no pulse. Deputy Hannon observed this and immediately started administering CPR. Shortly after, the victim regained a pulse and CCVFR arrived to continue the rescue efforts. The victim was transported to a local hospital where he made a full recovery thanks to the efforts of Deputy Lauren Hannon. Deputy Lauren Hannon and Deputy Tyler Habart responded to a call referencing an unresponsive male lying on the ground. Upon arrival, the deputies observed the victim making gurgling sounds and he had a faint pulse. The victim then stopped breathing and the deputies were unable to locate a pulse. Deputies Hannon and Habart immediately began CPR. After several minutes of CPR, the victim regained a pulse and began taking shallow breaths. Cape Canaveral Volunteer Fire Rescue arrived moments later and continued the rescue efforts. The victim was transported to a local hospital where he made a full recovery.
Will those mentioned please stand and be recognized? Wow, that is a lot of life-saving going on, folks. I'm here to tell you, that is amazing. Next, we will recognize the 2017 Reserve Deputy Sheriff of the Year. Our Reserve Deputy of the Year was selected from 55 reserve and auxiliary deputies currently volunteering with the Sheriff's Office. Our reserves and auxiliary deputy sheriffs donate thousands of hours each year that benefit our agencies and our communities.
Reserve Deputy of the Year.
Commander Paul Ring retired from the BCSO in May of 2016 and immediately joined the reserve unit to continue his service to Brevard. In 2017, Reserve Deputy Ring volunteered 450 hours, including 13 special details for charity fundraisers, parades, and security operations, and he provided post-hurricane assistance after Hurricane Irma. Additionally, the reserve unit conducted a series of saturation patrols to assist precinct patrol and visibility, where he worked every detail. Deputy Ring has consistently stepped up and volunteered to provide an invaluable service to our citizens at absolutely no cost. After proudly serving over 30 years with our agency, Paul now volunteers hundreds of hours each year that could be spent with his family and friends. Yet his incredible efforts are always without hesitation, completely genuine, and greatly appreciated. No matter what the task may be, Deputy Ring enthusiastically executes the Sheriff's Office mission.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage our 2017 Reserve Deputy Sheriff of the Year, Deputy Paul Ring. Paul is truly the definition of a reserve deputy. He holds a full-time job. He volunteers so much time and effort to the agency and to our citizens. Thank you, Paul. Paul will also be receiving a special gift from the Coastal Florida Police Benevolent Association as he exits stage left. Next, we will recognize our Communication Officers of the Month. At this time, could I ask that our Communications Officers of the Month join Sheriff Ivey on stage. The Communication Officer of the Month recipients were selected from 44 communication officers who handle all emergency radio traffic dispatch for the Brevard County Sheriff's Office and several of our local police agencies. They are the lifeblood of our agency.
Communications Officers of the Month.
Communications Officer Kristen Babb received a call for service in which the victim of a burglary was in pursuit of the suspect. She dispatched multiple units, including a canine, and checked the availability of STAR. Officer Babb initiated emergency traffic and documented updates from the units on scene. She relayed the suspect description to Cocoa Police and subsequently patched west with Countywide. She was diligent and efficient in documenting transmissions for over an hour while units attempted to locate the suspect. Titusville Fire Rescue ordered the emergency evacuation of the BCSO Communications Center due to the very strong, obnoxious odor coming from a server room. Assistant Shift Supervisor Monica Mall made immediate notifications to first responders of the evacuation. Monica directed dispatchers to relocate to the Titusville Police Department, which serves as the primary backup location. She provided guidance in setting up the temporary work center and ensured all dispatchers had the required equipment to maintain county-wide dispatching operations. The source of the odor was later determined to be a battery leaking acid in the server room. Communications Officer Violetta Yazlovskaya relieved the dispatcher on the North Radio channel, which had emergency traffic in reference to a barricaded mail. She quickly became familiar with the call and maintained emergency radio traffic for 4 hours while SWAT strategized how to safely get the mail out of the house. As Yazlovskaya documented units positioned along the perimeter, keeping everyone updated until the suspect was in custody. While Officer Alicia Robin was working West Radio, she received a priority call regarding a suspect waving an AK-47 around, threatening to shoot people. The suspect was reportedly chasing a victim, and an onslaught of deputy information requests ensued. For more than 4 hours, Alicia calmly and expertly filtered through the information, ensuring the responding units were updated with the most pertinent information, all while accurately documenting the locations and comments of all involved. In July of 2017, Supervisor Cheryl Pelletier was working East Radio when she dispatched an armed robbery that had just occurred. She quickly relayed vital information to the responding units as they canvassed a large area for the suspects. As she continued to update the units conducting the robbery investigation, a burglary was reported that may be related to the robbery. Cheryl expertly dispatched the burglary in progress, and the detailed information allowed the responding patrol deputies to locate and arrest the suspects within minutes of arrival. Officer Tadishi Samuel was working the west radio position as the east radio dispatcher was still preparing to begin the shift. As a result of the delay, Officer Samuel observed that a disturbance call referenced an extremely irate subject. Officer Samuel then continued to address her respective responsibilities and assumed the urgent responsibilities of East Radio as well. Even though she is only in her first year of service, her confidence, knowledge, and commitment was clearly demonstrated. Communications Officer Peggy Human was working the South Radio when she received two priority calls coming within 1 minute of each other. The first call was regarding an armed male who had critically wounded his girlfriend. Through the teamwork of all involved, both the victim and suspect were safely recovered and transported for medical treatment with critical injuries. Peggy also received a call reference to 3 people aboard a small vessel taking on water. She coordinated contact with Indian River County Search Operations and BCSO deputies, who together located and rescued the boaters within an hour. Alicia Robin was working East Radio when she received a call reference to an armed robbery. She dispatched multiple units to the location while relaying vital information, including the suspect's description. After emergency traffic was initiated, a responding deputy's emergency radio activation was initiated. Officer Robin made numerous attempts to raise the deputy and check on his status without success, all while multiple deputies were advising shots fired. Officer Robin calmly maintained complete control, continuing to seek the locations and well-being of everyone on scene during this highly stressful incident. Officer Tadishi Samuel was working North Radio when a call for service was received from Volusia County Sheriff's Office requesting our agency to assist with the domestic violence call involving shots fired. Once the BCSO communications supervisor patched the channels, Samuel worked the call from our agency, keeping everyone updated. The communications patch then lost effectiveness, at which time Tadishi stayed on the telephone with BCSO communications and updated her units as she received information.
Let's extend a round of applause for our Communication Officers of the Month. We will now recognize our Communication Officer of the Year.
Communications Officer of the Year.
In February 2017, Communications Officer Zachary Samland was working West Radio during an hour-long incident where multiple deputies were conducting surveillance on a wanted person. Officer Samland coordinated the activities to include specialized units as they ultimately concluded the event with an arrest. In May, Officer Samland was working West Radio while monitoring the Game Over Task Force on a specialized channel. Officer Samland provided support throughout the operation, which included a foot pursuit, 2 suspect apprehensions, and the recovery of a stolen vehicle. In July, while working East Radio, Samland was asked to run a tag. When the tag came back on a stolen vehicle, he confirmed the tag with the deputy and then initiated emergency traffic. As the deputies followed the vehicle through multiple precinct jurisdictions, Officer Samland quickly notified the dispatcher, who made sure her units were prepared to assist if needed. With confidence and efficiency, he maintained emergency traffic for over an hour until the deputies were able to detain the suspect. Communications Officer Samland will also be awarded a Commendable Service Bar for each of these incidents.
Ladies and gentlemen, our 2017 Communication Officer of the Year, Zachary Samland. Zach will also be receiving a special gift from the Coastal Florida Police Benevolent Association as he exits. How about a round of applause for all of our other month winners and our Communication Officer of the Year.
Great job, guys. Great job. Zach, you guys are going to go off that way.
Play the music, exit stage left. There we go. Perfect. Congratulations to everyone. We will now recognize our Employees of the Month. Will our Employees of the Month please join Sheriff Ivy on stage? Our recipients were selected from 438 civilian employees who serve in numerous capacities throughout the Brevard County Sheriff's Office. Truly our unsung heroes, they keep the machine running each and every day.
Employees of the Month.
CSI Emily Cretion and homicide agent Wayne Simmock had been investigating a homicide case since June of 2015 in which the victim was shot at a local hotel and then dumped. Agent Simmock was eventually able to identify 5 suspects. Through Cretion's processing of the crime scene and vehicle, Agent Simmock was able to use that evidence and information obtained from interviews to charge all 5 in the homicide. By 2017, 3 of the suspects had pled guilty and 1 suspect was found guilty after a trial, with the 5th suspect's trial still pending. When the jail's sewing program was first implemented in 2007, corrections technician Pamela Rogers was assigned and single-handedly built the program into a full-scale manufacturing center, which has saved the Sheriff's Office hundreds of thousands of dollars since its inception. CT Rogers displays the highest level of confidence and efficiency in every task and special project she undertakes. Her initiative and commitment reflect highly upon herself and the BCSO. She is truly deserving of this recognition. Investigative Support Specialist Olivia Franz works with the Special Victims Unit, along with processing all of the SVU DV reports, assisting the agents with special requests, assisting the other support specialists, and answering phones. She is always willing and volunteers for additional duties. Olivia has taken an active role this year in assisting with charity fundraisers, coordinating the raffle and t-shirt sales. Her dedication is reflected in the division's success. Since being assigned as a second staff veterinarian to the BCSO Animal Care Center in 2016, DVM Robert Edwards has proven to be a valuable asset to the Animal Services Unit in multiple ways. In addition to his normal veterinary duties, DVM Edwards has taken on the responsibilities of addressing animal neglect and cruelty cases originating in Brevard County. Because of his efforts, many criminals have been held accountable for the mistreatment, neglect, and cruelty of animals. Coordinator Diane Giordano has been quick to implement changes to help in productivity and effectiveness and is always looking for ways to improve the agency. In one of the many ways she helped the agency become more efficient, Coordinator Giordano was instrumental in helping implement our digital law enforcement and correctional promotional exams. She has also played an integral part with the nationally recognized Self-Defense Through Tactical Shooting course offered at the agency, contributing greatly to the success of this course. Analytical specialist Jennifer Martinez has taken the initiative to document and identify the gang-related criminal element throughout this county. In striving to improve her overall work product, Analyst Martinez attended the Law Enforcement Analyst Academy, a limited enrollment program of college-level coursework that requires attendance over a 6-month time period. Her instructor complimented her on the thoroughness of her project paper, as it was considered the most comprehensive presentation she has seen. Support Specialist Jamie Sellers was assigned to the Accreditation and Administrative Services units, but has assisted all operations at the Parkway Complex. She has developed a proficiency in the requirements of accreditation as it applies to law enforcement and corrections. In concert with the Human Resources Unit, Specialist Sellers developed a new hire orientation on the DMS platform and has proven to be an energetic staff member who, through her hard work and dedication to professionalism, has greatly modernized the accreditation unit. In an investigation of 2 business burglaries within 24 hours, analyst Lisa Church used every analytical technique possible to identify information, discovering the suspects were going to retrieve hidden items they had stolen and plant them on the property belonging to a witness. An accomplice would then call in anonymous tips, reporting the stolen property on the witness's property, believing this would result in the witness being a suspect where his credibility would be called into question. Due to Lisa's efforts, agents were able to identify the plot to frame an innocent witness and recover the stolen property. Specialist Brittany Bodnick recognized her fellow co-worker was in distress while eating lunch. Observing that the victim was in respiratory distress due to an obstruction of her airway, fearing for her co-worker's safety, Specialist Bodnick administered the Heimlich maneuver. After a few thrusts, the obstruction was cleared and the victim was breathing normally. Brittany's quick actions and willingness to administer emergency aid avoided a serious medical emergency and most likely saved the life of a friend and co-worker. Dr. Sarah Boyd is a skilled veterinarian and leader, tirelessly performing rounds, medical exams, surgeries, and fielding questions from the public on a daily basis. With over 6,000 animals coming into the care center each year, Dr. Boyd's expertise, leadership, and commitment to the welfare of the animals in Brevard is not only valued, but was instrumental in the achievement of a no-kill status. She has proven to be a tremendous asset to our agency, one that goes above and beyond each and every day. Accounting clerk Samir Shah's day-to-day attention to detail and precise accounting practices at the jail complex were highlighted as he was reconciling the inmate financial reports when he discovered a discrepancy with an inmate's account. Clerk Shah immediately notified his supervisor and began researching the discrepancy. The concern was turned over to the Economic Crimes Unit and a criminal investigation was initiated. The investigation resulted in the arrest of an individual who was charged with the fraudulent use of a credit card.
Please join me in a round of applause for our Employees of the Month. Ladies and gentlemen, we will now recognize our Employee of the Year.
Employee of the Year.
Senior Human Resources Officer Ron Faulknall has been with the Sheriff's Office over 25 years, leading human resources for more than 10 years, providing guidance to employees related to all of their benefit needs. Every year, over 1,350 employees have an opportunity to choose their insurance benefits during 2 weeks of open enrollment. Ron coordinates open enrollment with the county and has a vast knowledge of the various insurance plans offered to BCSO employees and their families. During open enrollment, Ron responds to hundreds of telephone calls, emails, questions, and concerns, where he explains the pertinent information to the employee and answers their questions. During unforeseen circumstances related to illness, injury, or death, Ron is called upon to offer assistance to the employee or their family, to ensure that benefits are explained and received, and he handles every situation with privacy, kindness, and compassion. Ron is a caring and dedicated professional that you can always count on. BCSO Employee of the Year, Ron Faulknall, is also receiving a Bar of Merit for his efforts.
Ladies and gentlemen, our 2017 Employee of the Year, Mr. Ron Faulknall. I'm sure. It says it on my sheet, so it must be true.
All right, come on up.
Come on up. Ron will also be receiving a lovely gift from the Coastal Florida Police Benevolent Association. How about a round of applause for Ron and all of our of the month winners? Congratulations. Great job, everybody. We will now recognize our Correction Deputies of the Month. Will our Correction Deputies of the Month please join Sheriff Ivey on stage? Our Correction Deputies of the Month recipients were selected from 321 corrections deputies who serve in the Brevard County Jail Complex. Our correction deputies work with some of the most dangerous criminals in our country and must remain vigilant and alert at all times. They are one of the reasons we sleep safe in our homes at night.
Corrections Deputies of the Month.
Corporal Sherry Austin received information that an inmate was sharing and/or possibly selling cocaine to inmates in her cell block. Corporal Austin proceeded to investigate all the information and quickly pull the inmate out of the cell block to place her in a body scanner. However, this technique was not possible to use as the inmate was pregnant. While conducting a strip search, Sherry saw what appeared to be plastic on the inmate. The confiscated item appeared to be crack cocaine. When Corrections Deputy Shauna Dankins observed an officer safety bulletin regarding a female who was committing felony theft and fraud, she consulted with Corrections Deputy Kelly Capariso, and working together, the two were able to identify the unknown suspect as a former inmate. In addition to identifying a felony suspect, the information they both supplied ultimately led to the identity of an additional suspect who was responsible for multiple residential and vehicle burglaries, along with several fraud cases. Corrections Deputy Shannon Popilacek observed a female inmate that had fallen down in the court holding cell. Responding immediately, she assessed the situation and determined the female inmate was unresponsive and had stopped breathing. Shannon notified jail complex medical personnel and immediately began CPR. As nurse Angela McHugh conducted chest compressions, Popilacek performed rescue breaths until BCFR arrived on scene. The victim was stabilized and transported to HRMC via life flight. Corporal Tonya Pack and 2 corrections deputies responded to the Sally Port to assist a patrol deputy with a combative prisoner. Corporal Pack immediately took control of the situation, using her extensive years of experience to de-escalate the intoxicated prisoner. The prisoner was searched prior to being brought into the booking area and became irate again, refusing to change into a jail uniform. During this process, Corporal Pack observed a clear plastic bag on the inmate, which contained what was determined to be a controlled substance. Corporal Timothy Fay was departing his residence for work when he was alerted to a suspicious man at his neighbor's residence. Corporal Fay approached the suspect's van to directly question him. Corporal Fay then identified himself to the suspect, who then attempted to flee. Without hesitation, Corporal Fay detained him and instructed the homeowner to call the police. Satellite Beach Police Department then responded and arrested the suspect. Corrections Deputy Jonathan Lopez Hilario was off duty when he heard a female yelling for help outside of his home. As he responded, he witnessed a male aggressively striking the female prior to throwing her down. Lopez Hilario confronted the male by identifying himself and ordering him to stop, eventually having to draw his weapon to get the male to comply and to lie on the floor until Melbourne Police Department arrived and took control of the scene. His quick actions prevented serious injury to the expectant mother and her unborn child. Corrections Deputy Carissa LaRoche and Corrections Deputy Lonita Collins were alerted to an inmate having a seizure in the cell block they were working in. The 2 did not hesitate to get the inmate on a flat surface and started administering CPR. Corrections Deputy Maria Biddle assisted LaRoche and Collins with chest compressions and rescue breathing until medical personnel took over. The inmate was revived and transported to a local hospital in stable condition. Medical staff noted that had it not been for the quick response of these deputies, the victim surely would have perished. Corporal Sherry Summers is our Director of Inmate Programs. She coordinates, schedules, and tracks over 30 volunteers and approximately 580 inmates taking part in various educational, life skills, and self-improvement courses at the Brevard County Jail Complex. She serves as our liaison with the community as an advocate to secure needed training, employment opportunities, and court-mandated services for inmates to reduce recidivism rates. Corporal Summers consistently demonstrates integrity, professionalism, and dedication. Responding to the jail complex to assist an inmate who was in medical distress having a seizure, FTO Arthur Cole arrived with the nurses, confirming the inmate was unresponsive and having difficulty breathing. The inmate was in such distress he received multiple shocks from the AED while Cole continued to apply rescue breaths. FTO Brian Claudius responded with BCFR and assumed rescue breaths as the inmate was transported to the ambulance. FTO Claudius continued to perform rescue breaths until the inmate was administered a medication by BCFR, where he regained consciousness. While escorting inmates from the van to the booking area, an unresponsive male was discovered in the van. Corrections deputies Mark Halfhide and Carissa LaRoche responded, removed the inmate from the van, and properly positioned him onto the ground. They quickly assessed and realized that he did not have a pulse. Corrections Deputy LaRoche instantaneously started rescue breathing, while Corrections Deputy Halfhide began chest compressions. After 5 minutes of intense CPR by both corrections deputies, the inmate was reassessed and had regained his pulse. BCFR then arrived, assumed control, and stabilized the inmate. Due to the strong winds and flooding from Hurricane Irma, the jail complex water pump station suffered catastrophic failure, raising concern for the potential for severe health hazards associated with no drinking water, and the inability to remove human waste for over 1,800 inmates and staff. The facility maintenance staff soared into action, collecting large volumes of water from a retention pond to flush toilets, and delivering potable water continuously throughout the night. Sergeant Carl Pissinger, Corporal Edward Shear, and the staff's innovative actions were instrumental in maintaining operations and mitigating thousands of dollars in potential damages. Corrections Deputy Stephen Tilley responded to the Melbourne Police Department and began to transport a prisoner. As he was checking the property, he noticed a dollar bill rolled up with a rubber band around it. Deputy Tilley opened the property with the officer present and pulled the dollar out to inspect it. When the bill was unrolled, he discovered that it contained more drugs. Deputy Tilley's actions demonstrate his attention to detail, which resulted in preventing drugs from being transported into the jail complex.
How about a round of applause for these outstanding men and women? Amazing job. We'll now recognize our 2017 Corrections Deputy of the Year.
Corrections Deputy of the Year.
Corrections Deputy Carissa LaRoche has been a member of the BCSO since 2009, consistently demonstrating the highest level of dedication and professionalism, as recently highlighted in multiple incidents. In a July 2017 medical incident, Carissa maintained her calm and focus, performing CPR with chest compressions and rescue breathing. She continued to provide CPR for over 7 minutes until emergency medical personnel arrived and took care. In August of 2017, an inmate suddenly fell to the ground having what appeared to be a seizure. Corrections Deputy LaRoche immediately provided assistance to the victim, administering chest compressions in order to revive the victim. In September of 17, she demonstrated heroic action in the saving of another life. Being the first deputy to respond to the scene, LaRoche assisted in removing the unresponsive inmate from the transportation van and positioned the inmate on the ground, performing CPR to save the inmate's life. Corrections Deputy LaRoche's commitment to service has resulted in her being presented with 2 life-saving bars.
Ladies and gentlemen, our 2017 Corrections Deputy of the Year, Carissa LaRoche. Congratulations, Carissa. Another great honor which Carissa received recently was to be selected as the Florida Sheriff Association 2017 Corrections Deputy of the Year. She received her award and was honored at the FSA Winter Conference in February and represents the entire state of Florida. Carissa will be receiving a special gift from Coastal Florida Police Benevolent Association. A great round of applause for Carissa and all of the month winners. We will now recognize our 2017 Deputies of the Month. Will our Deputies of the Month please join Sheriff Ivey on stage? Our Deputies of the Month were selected from 536 Sheriff's deputies who proudly serve in patrol, canine, the Marine Unit, investigations, aviation, civil, court services, and yes, even the dreaded motor deputies of the traffic unit. But you really don't need to fear them. They work for me. They really don't write a lot of tickets.
Deputies of the Month.
Deputies Thomas Vinciletti and Ryan Carpenter responded to a female screaming for help, very disoriented and crying. The victim told them she was staying with another female and a male who had forced her to ingest drugs and conduct sexual acts. The deputies were able to identify the male, who was wanted for home invasion warrant. The female victims advised they had been forced into prostitution by the suspect through fear of physical abuse. The suspect is a violent subject who had been carrying out prostitution activities throughout Florida and is a suspect in an out-of-county homicide investigation. Lieutenant Steve Fernez responded to a traffic crash where dispatchers advised that a vehicle had struck a cement barricade and was on fire with a person trapped inside. Lieutenant Fernez arrived within seconds of TPD's Sergeant T.J. Wright, and they immediately located a vehicle fully engulfed in flames. While searching for passengers, Fernez heard someone yelling from a wooded area near the crash. Lieutenant Fernez entered the woods and located an injured male, and with Wright's help carried the seriously injured male away from danger, with the vehicle exploding soon after they passed it. Lieutenant Mike Green, along with other members of his squad, responded to a report of an attempted armed home invasion robbery. The deputies took immediate action and initiated a search of the apartment complex. Lieutenant Green encountered a suspect who had a black semi-automatic handgun in his right hand. Although given the opportunity to submit or flee, the suspect chose to charge and engage Lieutenant Green, forcing Green to fire his duty weapon, effectively neutralizing the suspect's actions. On this night, Lieutenant Green was called upon to make a life or death decision few of us in law enforcement have had to make, displaying courage by confronting this individual. Deputies Marissa Wright and Alicia Miller responded to a subject who was acting erratically and assaulting citizens with a metal pole. Upon their arrival, Wright and Miller observed the suspect brandishing a metal object approximately 3 to 4 feet in length as a weapon. The suspect turned and rushed towards Deputy Wright while swinging the weapon at her head. With no room to retreat, Wright drew her firearm while giving verbal commands for the suspect to stop. As the suspect attempted to strike Deputy Wright, she used deadly force, successfully neutralizing the violent attacker. Agent Mike Spadafora was leading an online internet investigation where an unknown male expressed his desire to sexually abuse young children. When the male made arrangements to travel to Brevard County from Switzerland in order to meet with Agent Spadafora and his intended victim. The suspect was arrested and identified as a 55-year-old German citizen who was residing in Switzerland. It is believed, based on his conversations, that the suspect used his international travels to sexually abuse children around the world. As a result of this investigation, an international child predator was sentenced to life in prison or never again sexually abuse a child. Sergeant Gregory Smith was driving home on 528 when he was flagged down by 2 females stopped on the side of the roadway. Assuming it was a stranded vehicle, he was immediately informed that a 2-year-old child had stopped breathing as the family was heading home from the beach. After assessing the situation, Sergeant Smith quickly began administering rescue breaths to the child, who appeared to have heat stroke. As the child began breathing again, Sergeant Smith poured water over the child in an attempt to lower the child's body temperature while awaiting BCFR's arrival. The child made a full recovery. During an interview in a Cocoa Police Department investigation, a juvenile victim stated she had recently had sex with an older male at a location in the Sheriff's Office jurisdiction. Once this information was obtained, Agent Alexander Sorokin initiated his investigation and made arrangements for the child to be interviewed forensically as well as examined for evidence of sexual assault. The Sheriff's Office agents who responded to the location where the assault occurred were able to obtain a possible identity of the suspect through a credit card receipt. Additionally, the juvenile's purse was located in the room. With this information in hand, the victim was able to positively identify the suspect via a photographic lineup, leading to his arrest. Deputy Jesse Doucette and 2 other deputies responded to a house fire on Merritt Island. Deputy Doucette was first on scene and observed thick black smoke coming out of all openings of the residence. When neighbors informed him that there was someone inside, Doucette observed a female inside the burning residence, slumped over in a wheelchair. He went to her aid and was able to pull the woman from the house and into the driveway. Unresponsive and barely breathing, Doucette assisted in placing her in the recovery position and monitored her until Brevard County Fire Rescue arrived. BCSO Economics Crime Task Force Supervisor Sergeant Jacqueline Heron assumed lead investigative duties in a criminal embezzlement investigation. The investigation revealed the suspect had embezzled over $170,000 while acting as a treasurer. During the course of the 6-month investigation, Sergeant Heron found the suspect used various methods to avoid detection and had also falsified receipts in order to issue checks, which he deposited in her personal accounts. 95 felony counts were eventually filed against the suspect. Deputies Breanne Lewis and Caleb Pinkham responded to a Cocoa residence in reference to an injured or ill person, being advised that a male had accidentally cut his arm and was bleeding profusely. Deputy Pinkham arrived on scene and observed the male lying on his back, bleeding extensively from his arm at such a rate and pressure that there were splatter marks on the walls, ceiling, and floor. Without hesitation, Deputy Pinkham applied a tourniquet to the male's arm, which stopped the bleeding almost immediately. Deputy Lewis and then covered the exposed wound area with sterile dressings until BCFR arrived. While investigating a multi-kilogram cocaine organization, Agent Jason Roberts identified the leader of this criminal enterprise. Agent Roberts coordinated surveillance details, controlled purchases through a confidential informant, and eventually facilitated an undercover agent infiltrating the organization. Over the next several months, Roberts identified various aspects of the suspect's organization, including his customer base and sources of supply. Agent Roberts then authored several wiretap orders and began intercepting the suspect's phone calls. The investigation culminated with several search warrants being executed and numerous arrest warrants being served.
Please join me in a rousing round of applause for our Deputies of the Month. Before we announce our Deputy of the Year, we have a special presentation. Would Lieutenant Mike Green please join Sheriff at center stage? The Medal of Valor is the highest award presented by the Sheriff's Office to an employee who has distinguished themselves by an act of heroism or puts him or herself in imminent danger and who takes such action with knowledge of risk involved. As you heard in the previous presentation, Lieutenant Mike Green demonstrated a true act of heroism is being presented with the Medal of Valor. Congratulations, Mike. Ladies and gentlemen, it is now time to recognize our 2017 Deputy of the Year.
Deputy of the Year.
Deputy Tanner Primer began his career with the Brevard County Sheriff's Office in July of 2008 and entered the Law Enforcement Academy the following year. In July of 2015, Deputy Primer was assigned to the Agriculture Marine Unit, where he remains today. Deputy Primer, responsible for Port Canaveral ship escorts and seaport security, was on duty in March of 2017 when two young vacationers accidentally flipped their jet ski upside down and directly into the path of an outgoing cruise ship. With little room to maneuver, Canaveral Harbormaster pilot Captain Doug Brown veered the ship slightly to allow Tanner to steer his boat into the path of the ship and pull the girls to safety. The quick actions of both Primer and Brown saved the girls from potentially serious, if not fatal, injuries. In May 2017, while out enjoying time with his family on his day off, Deputy Primer noticed a female at the table beside him who appeared to be choking. Primer approached the female and immediately performed 2 abdominal thrusts, successfully dislodging the obstruction. The female immediately was able to begin breathing as medical treatment arrived. In his true humble fashion, Deputy Primer did not identify himself as a law enforcement officer, but quietly retreated to his table with his family.
Ladies and gentlemen, your 2017 Deputy of the Year, Deputy Tanner Primer. In addition to being named Deputy of the Year, Tanner is also being awarded the Medal of Valor. Please join me in congratulating Deputy Primer and all of the month award recipients. Congratulations. You gotta go. This has been a wonderful night of recognition and honor. Congratulations to all our recipients and their families. There is no greater award than to be presented by award by your peers. I am truly honored to be a part of such a wonderful organization. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to Sheriff Ivey to close. Sheriff?
Thank you, Greg, for emceeing such an incredible evening, recognizing all of our truly, truly heroic individuals that work for us. Greg has just really made a custom out of emceeing our annual awards event, and he does a tremendous job for us. So please give him a big round of applause. Winston Churchill once said, "Courage is the first of human qualities, because it is the quality that guarantees all the others." Tonight, you had the chance to see just a glimpse of the amazing examples of courage, dedication, and passion for serving others that I see each and every day from the men and women of this agency. A lot of times people I often will say to me, why I wear my uniform so much. They'll ask. My wife even asked me, do I have any other clothes besides this uniform? I'll tell you why I wear my uniform all the time. It's because I love being a part of this agency. It's because I am proud to wear the same uniform that the courageous men and women you saw tonight on this stage. And it's because as being a part of this agency is the most incredible accomplishment in my 39-year career as a law enforcement officer. During my entire career, I've always loved my job and consider myself truly blessed to have served with several great agencies. But to serve with this agency is to serve with the finest professionals in the world. This is an amazing agency, and each member of it makes it what it is today and what it will be in years to come. Sometimes when agency heads talk about their team, you'll hear them say, we have support teams or support roles within our agency. On each occasion, I cringe because there are no support teams or roles in our agency. Each member and their assignment are absolutely vital to the success of our overall mission, protecting our citizens. If you take just one single component of this agency out, it doesn't function in the same, and it would not be as successful. So tonight, regardless if you were on stage, here to celebrate a team's member's success, or unable to attend because you're out on duty fulfilling your role in protecting our community, I want you to know that I am extremely proud of all of you for everything you do each and every day, and I consider myself blessed and honored to be part of your team. Now, before we leave the beautiful facility tonight, I would like to extend a special thanks to each and every award recipient and their families, Pastor Larry Linkus for our invocation, and all the wonderful staff here at the Church of Vieira. Please give them a round of applause. Also, our honor guard for our flag ceremony, Brevard County Pipes and Drums, and my beautiful daughter Jana for singing our national anthem tonight. Of course, I'd like to thank Commander Greg Purdon, Chief Mike DeMorat, Gene Palmer, Katrina Wilson, Todd Goodyear, Cheryl Sink, and the many volunteers for their efforts to prepare tonight's presentation. Please give them a round of applause. Also, I'd be remiss if I didn't thank Manager Ron Spangler and his team who worked so hard to engrave the beautiful plaques, our crime scene unit for taking the pictures of the ceremony, the awards committee members for their time, consideration, and dedication in making sure so many deserving award recipients were recognized, and all of the family and friends who joined us here tonight. A special thank you to PBA President Sergeant Marlon Buggs and Representative Al Betcher for their support of our agency and members and the wonderful gifts they presented to all of our Of the Year award recipients. Guys, your support is truly appreciated. Thank you. I would also be remiss if I didn't personally thank Giles, Tom, and the entire Space Coast Daily team for their continued support and devotion to recognize those who dedicate themselves to make Brevard County such a wonderful place to live, work, and raise our families. Tonight's video presentation was a fitting tribute to our agency and its members, and we truly appreciate all their help. So please give them a round of applause. Just a quick reminder, if you'd like to take more pictures, we're set up out in the forum or the foyer so that we can do that. I know we took a lot of them upstairs, but if you'd like to take pictures with your family, with your wards, please feel free to do so. In closing, I want to share with each of you here tonight how blessed we are to serve in Brevard County. I tell everyone that we serve in a community where our citizens love us, trust us, and protect us just as much as we love, trust, and protect them. Without question, having their support and love of our community is the greatest gift we could ever ask for. So on behalf of our entire agency, we say thank you. Travel home safely, everybody, and God bless.